Welcome back to Hemp Homeschool. This is Katie from Kentucky Hemp Works. I have with me my daughter Ayla. Today we're going to talk about baking with hemp. We're going to do a little baking here, and we're going to talk about some other ways that you can cook with hemp. I brought Ayla with me because she loves to cook. She cooks for us pretty often, actually. Sometimes if it's a really busy morning, she just goes and gets the eggs and toast and gets everything ready. She even gets food ready for our baby. So she's great in the kitchen, and so she's going to be a huge help today. So we'll get started. We started some of this process so that we wouldn't have to spend too much time on it and we could just get right down to the cookies. But we are going to bake the typical Nestle Toll House cookie recipe, and I think most people are familiar with this recipe. It's been on the back of Nestle Toll House cookies since I was a kid, and probably a lot longer than that. So we just went with something that was very simple and recognizable for everybody. That way you can try this at home. You don't have to do it with hemp if you don't have any, but if you do want some, we do sell, hemp oil and hemp protein. So anyway, we'll just go ahead and get started, and then I'll get into the little talking and educational stuff after we get this mixed up. So the recipe tells us first to preheat our oven to 375, and actually, now that I think about it, step one is always wash your hands, put your gloves on, wear a hairnet. If we were making this stuff through our commercial kitchen to sell it to people, we would have hairnets on, we would be wearing gloves, and but this is just for our family, and so since we're social distancing, we're just going to eat these ourselves. We shouldn't have any problem with that. But anyway, wash your hands first. Don't touch your hair like I'm doing. So preheat your oven to 375 degrees. In a small bowl, combine your flour, baking soda, and salt. So we have done that here, but the recipe calls for 2 1/4 cups of flour. So I kept a half a cup of that flour out. So I only added 1 3/4 flour to the mixture. Are you bored already? I am going to add to this 1/2 cup of our hemp protein powder. So Ayla's going to measure that out for us, and just go ahead and dump it in there. So you want to level it off on the top and make sure it's nice and flat so you get an accurate measurement. So Ayla's going to add that in. And then in a large mixing bowl, you'll beat your butter, granulated sugar, brown sugar, and vanilla extract until creamy. So we have already done that here. All right, so we got our flour mixture. We will just mix that up a little bit, and you can see, well, I'm going to show this real quick and then you can mix it. You can see it kind of starts to turn your cookies green. So this is the first step in the process of having green chocolate chip cookies. So you go ahead and mix that up. So now we're gonna add this. So let's actually swap this out with you. You can take that, grab your blender. I'll move this out of the way. Put that up there. Can you see it?
Perfect.
Here, let me just put this over here and clean it up later. Okay, so we're gonna blend this on a low speed at first, and we'll try to do this part pretty quickly so you don't have to sit here and just watch us blending stuff. And we'll get into the education. So go ahead and blend it on low. And I will add the eggs one at a time. Move it around the cookie. Next, I'm going to add in the flour mixture. So you can, let's get around all the edges really Perfect. Okay. So you go ahead and you can turn it up to like a medium speed, and I will add the flour. Just keep going around and around in circles. That way, it's okay if you make a little mess. We'll clean it all up. That's what baking is. It's making messes and cleaning it up. So when we add our hemp flour, this is something that you can do anytime that you're baking. So if you're baking with flour, you're making bread or pierogies or whatever your flour recipe is, you can substitute some of your flour for this hemp protein. And you can't completely replace it, because if you just use the protein by itself, it's not going to get that bread consistency. It's not like a baking flour that you can just bake by itself. But if you just add a little bit in, you're adding a ton of fiber and protein to your diet as well. So with these cookies, last little bit, looking good. So with these cookies, we are still eating our chocolate chips. It's loaded with sugar and brown sugar and butter. I'm not going to try to convince you that these are healthy cookies, but it does kind of make it a little, makes your conscience feel a little better to know that you're also getting that extra fiber and that boost of protein in your cookies as well, along with your chocolate chips. So I think we should stir in the morsels and the nuts. And that is the last part. We'll stir those in with a spoon. Okay. Here, I'll help you out here. Should just take a second. And I'm gonna hit this thing one more time. My beater, this mixer here, was my grandmother's, which is like half of my appliances, or not appliances, but kitchen stuff. It came from my grandmother, so it's probably like 40 years old. 40 years old, still working like a charm. Let's stick this over here. Okay, so the last step is to mix in our morsels, and you can use this to mix them. I will pour them in. So the last part is to stir in your morsels and your nuts if you want them. I don't put nuts in my chocolate chip cookies because I don't think that's mature or responsible whatsoever. But I did bring some of these cedar nuts. These cedar nuts were actually imported from Siberia, and they're really tremendous sources of vitamins. Like, there's very few nuts on the planet, even hemp, that has more vitamins in one little nut than these bad boys do. I'm still not going to put them in there because that's just crazy. Nuts and chocolate chip cookies, I don't know.
It's nuts.
If you want to make nut cookies, make nut cookies, but leave my chocolate chip cookies alone. All right, and then the last step is just to drop those onto an ungreased baking sheet by tablespoons and bake it for 9 to 11 minutes. So if you want to go ahead and get started on that, we will cook these for 10 minutes. So you're just going to drop them like a little blob of it on there. It is possible that when you use the hemp, it'll end up with a little bit more of an oil content in the cookies. But what that usually does to them is it leaves them more moist when you're biting into them. And the texture is a little bit more of a spongy texture that's closer to, it's not really like a cake-like texture, but it is a little bit more spongy, sort of in the direction of cake. So that's just one example of things that you can cook with hemp, or ways that you can cook them. And like I said, you can add this to anything that you're making. So if you're cooking something and it's calling for some kind of flour or something like that, you can add a little bit of that protein as well. Some of the other things that we like to do, and I mentioned this in a previous video, is we like to make smoothies with the hemp protein, because that seems like one of the healthier ways that we can get a good amount of the protein into our diets. So with a smoothie, I would just start out with my smoothie base, which I prefer like an unsweetened almond milk. I don't really like the flavored almond milk, but unsweetened is good, or just regular almond milk. And then I'll add frozen fruits or whatever vegetables I have available, and a little bit of hemp protein. And are you saying no to the vegetables?
No. I just tasted some because it was on.
Oh, you just tasted some?
It tasted.
They're good yet? Tastes like hemp. It's working.
Didn't you say that it wouldn't taste like hemp?
Well, they don't really taste that much like hemp because we are sort of sneaking the hemp in. So Ayla asked, I don't know if you heard her, but she said, didn't you say that they're not going to taste like hemp? They don't really taste a lot like hemp. You can feel the change in texture. You can taste it a little bit, but it's not one of those things where it's going to give your cookies like a grassy, earthy flavor. You can go ahead and pop that in the oven. And do you want to keep timer for us for 9 minutes? Okay. So by the time they're finished, we should be ready, finished with the video. So anyway, yes, so it doesn't really change the taste too much, but it does really boost the nutritional profile. So other ways that you can bake with hemp or cook with hemp, a lot of people are interested. So we talked about the protein here, and the protein, which you've seen it before, is a dry green powder. So if you're looking at something that you can add a dry green powder to, then protein is the way to go. But if you need something, you need a little bit of oil in your recipe or something like that, hemp seed oil is a great alternative to other cooking oils. And hemp seed oil is really nice for any kind of low temperature cooking. So it's not good for frying, like if you're deep frying something, which would kind of defeat the purpose anyway, because you don't want to cook out all the good nutritional benefits. But at the same time, it's got a very low flash point, which means that it can start smoking, creating smoke, and it can catch on fire a lot easier than other oils. So we usually suggest using it for lower cooking temperatures. Sometimes we will, if we cook like shrimp or chicken or something, and we just want to sort of brush a little bit on there. But one quick and easy recipe that we do at home, because we love garlic. My husband is Russian, so he cooks a lot. What we will take some hemp seed oil and just add some fresh minced garlic. So we have like a small bowl of hemp seed oil. We'll add some minced garlic to that. And then you can add anything. So like I brought a couple things just to show, but I don't know how garlic paste would work, but we use minced garlic, like it comes in the little jars and it's already cut up. We'll just add that to our hemp seed oil, add some oregano or other Italian spices. You can add some dill if you like dill, and just add it to the hemp seed oil, and then you can either use it as a oil for dipping bread, so like a dipping oil, or you can just brush it on top of your bread, maybe even sprinkle some extra onion powder or garlic powder or cheese on it if you like that, and just pop it in the oven to toast it up, and it makes a really, really nice, just a nice garlic bread to go with dinner. So other ways to use hemp in food. We haven't gotten into using CBD in food, but a lot of people are very interested in it. So I thought I'd just very briefly go over some of the ingredients that are used in food and CBD production. So CBD extract is the resinous extract that comes off of the buds of the hemp plants. With that extract, you know, it's very, so the consistency of that extract is very thick, like molasses. It's like very gooey and hard to work with. But you can put that extract through additional processes and separate it down into its varying components, and you can actually separate the CBD into pure CBD. You can separate the CBD resin, which has all the cannabinoids, all of the terpenes, which are essential oils, all of the waxes and things that are naturally found in the plant is in that sticky resin. But when you separate out just the CBD itself, it actually is a powder. So this white powder is actually water soluble. So with the hemp seed oil, with the CBD extract, those are not water soluble. You have to find an oil to put them in. So if you're baking with it, you could add it to butter, melt it into butter and then use that butter, or melt it into oil and use that oil. But the nice thing about the isolate, this is called CBD isolate. So it's the isolated molecule of CBD just by itself, which comes out as a powder. So you can add this isolate to any of your dry mixes because it's in a powder form. It mixes up really nicely. You also can add it to water-based things. So if you want to drink or anything that's water-based, you can mix it right in and it's actually water soluble. So that's a big difference between different CBD types that are on the market. Some of them use the resinous full spectrum extract and some of them use the powder that's an isolate. So I won't get too far into that, but just know that there are ways to add CBD to whatever it is that you're cooking. Another thing that you can add is the terpenes. So I don't have a whole lot in this jar. I don't know how well you can see it. You see this gold, it's a very gooey little resin. It looks like there's just a little bit of honey in this jar. And what that is that's terpenes. Now these ones have been sitting in our fridge for a while, just kind of hanging out, waiting for someone to do something with them. But it's just a little bit of terpenes left. And what these are the essential oils of the plant. So just like you have essential oils of lavender, essential oils of eucalyptus and rose hips and all these other things, cannabis has essential oils as well. Now most people out there, if they're familiar with cannabis at all, they know that cannabis has a very strong smell. It's a very recognizable smell. Most people, if you're familiar with it, you catch a whiff of it, you know for sure that you're smelling cannabis. Because it's got so many of these terpenes, it produces large quantities of these terpenes per plant. That comes out in that sticky resin. And then when you're going through your processes to separate the isolate and terpenes and the waxes and everything else, you're separating these terpenes out separately from this and other cannabinoids. So what this does, what these two things do for you when you're baking, when you're adding isolate, so I'm not really a big fan of baking with CBD because it'll sort of vaporize the CBD, it cooks it, and I'd prefer to get mine with like cold pressed hemp seed oil. But you're just basically adding some level of CBD to your product. You're not tasting anything. You're not adding this to change the flavor or anything like this. You're just simply adding it to get CBD into your system. With the terpenes, it's a completely different story. These things are so strong that like one little drop of them can add flavor to an entire pitcher of a beverage. So if you are interested in adding just a touch of that cannabis smell and flavor and all the aroma to your food, then this would be the way to go. So CBD isolate, no flavor, no smell whatsoever. Terpenes have an incredibly strong smell and you can kind of smell them from across the room, and it only takes a very, very small amount. So if I had a pitcher of, let's say, lemonade, and I wanted to add terpenes to the pitcher, I could just maybe dip a utensil or a tool or something, just dip it in here, mix it up into the lemonade, and the whole pitcher will have that smell, that aroma of cannabis. So that's really nice when you're looking at something like pesto, something that, pesto is very strong, it's garlicky, it's got all these different herbs and stuff in there, but then you add something like this to it, it just creates a really amazing bouquet, so to speak. So it looks like we have 1.5 minutes until the cookies are ready. I'm so excited. So what should we talk about for the next 1.5 minutes? I guess that was all my ingredients here. Is there any questions or anything?
No questions.
No questions. Everybody's just bored watching us bake.
Jealous they can't have our cookies.
Yep, I know. I'm sorry that you can't have our cookies at home. But definitely, you know what? Let's talk about homework. So for homework, if you don't have any hemp in your household, that's okay. But it's still really a good idea for everybody to learn how to be comfortable in the kitchen, learn how to bake things from scratch. So we sometimes will bake bread from scratch. Not often. It's so convenient to just go out and buy a loaf of bread. But it is nice and it tastes better and so much better for you. So even if it's not a hemp baking project that you do, get in the kitchen, work with your kids. You know, baking is teaching math, it's teaching science, it's teaching chemistry, because you know you're creating chemical changes and with different ingredients. So it really is important for everybody, and we have far too many people who just don't know how to cook at all. So if we have problems in our country, like the problems that are going on right now, if you don't know how to do basic cooking, you know, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble. So just the basics. So you want to check on it? Go ahead and pull it out. We're all done. We'll see how they look. See if they came out all right. You see the red, those little red hand holders? Those two little red things? She's a pro. You want to grab it and bring it over? Do they look like they're finished? Yeah. Yeah? Okay, just grab them and bring them over. You want me to do it? All right, let's see how they look. They look awesome. They are all stuck together, but that is totally okay. Can you shut that for me, baby? So they turned out perfectly. They're a little lumpy, a little bit stuck together, but quite frankly, they all taste the same going down. And this is some beautiful cookies. The recipe tells us to let them cool for 2 minutes. I don't know if we can wait that long. But anyway, here you go. There's our cookies, and looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow. So come back and see us tomorrow for Hemp Homeschool. Once again at noon Central on Kentucky Hemp Works. Bye.